Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I am your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And we got a little NBA offseason roundtable, Tyson. It's NBA trade season, man. Like, we got big names on the move. We already talked about Bradley Beal going to your Phoenix Suns. So we dove into that one. But we got some other big names on the move. And, the headliner is John Collins to the – no, I'm just kidding. But John Collins was traded to the Jazz. But other big names on the move, others to follow, because there's not a big free agency class, Tyson. So I think if teams want to acquire pieces in this arms race, they're going to have to do it through the trade market.
It is an arms race. It always is at this point in the offseason. And then 3, 4, 5 months from now, half of the people that said, oh, the Nets will never work. And then the other half who thought they'll be fighting with each other. But, dude, the NBA is the best soap opera of all time. Like, it shits on Days of Our Lives. I've never seen it personally. I think that's probably the only one I know the name of, but Adam Silver's got this thing cooking.
Yo, he really does. He really does. And so let's start here. Chris Paul was traded to the Warriors. Initially, he was traded to the Washington Wizards in that Bradley Beal trade. Then the Warriors acquire Chris Paul by shipping out Jordan Poole. So we can talk a little bit about that, some other picks, yada, yada. Mainly the big move here is that the Warriors get Chris Paul. And I hear a lot of people saying, this doesn't make sense. This won't work. Like, I don't understand how this will work. To me, this is very simple. I think this is a good trade for the Warriors. If you look at the numbers, when Stephen Curry is off the court compared to when he's on it, it's night and day difference. Like how bad the Warriors were last year with Stephen Curry on the bench. Chris Paul, I think, can run a unit, take pressure off of Curry. And what the Warriors are famous for is high IQ basketball players. It's kind of like figuring it out. And Chris Paul is a really high IQ player, like still. And he's not going to have to do as much. I like this trade for the Warriors. Am I nuts?
I don't think it's going to work. But it's not, for basketball reasons. I just personality-wise, I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park. I think Chris Paul and Draymond Green are going to be at each other's throats. We might get more leaked videos from practice. But all that stuff aside, I agree. It's going to be deadly to see them with like a true floor general with the second unit. It's going to be interesting how Kerr kind of deploys Chris Paul as far as like the minutes between him, Steph, Clay, Draymond, because like we love these guys, but they are getting up there in age. And it's maybe getting to a point where you shouldn't have to rely on these guys, even playing 38 minutes a night. You're probably more comfortable with like a 35, 30 for Draymond and 24 for Chris Paul, somewhere around there. But it's going to be fun. I'm nervous that Chris Paul plays too slow at this point in his career, and the juxtaposition between when the Warriors are getting out and running with Steph on the court, especially in the playoffs, and then when Chris Paul comes in and all of a sudden it's 21 seconds out the shot clock every time up and down, you almost have to plan to defend two teams at that point. So maybe that's some sort of advantage. It's just good luck getting Chris Paul through the playoffs healthy. I think at this point in his career, we can kind of say that that's been the biggest bugaboo over the last few years. You run back, he hurt himself against the Lakers in Phoenix's run when they made it to the NBA Finals. He hurts himself last year in the second round against the Mavericks. And then obviously this year he didn't play most of the Nugget series after hurting himself. I think it was game 2. So that's a real concern. It's going to be insane to watch the two best point guards of this generation share a court together, though. And I think you're outside of your mind if you don't think there's going to be some cool-ass shit that they're going to cook up on offense.
Yeah, and with the personality thing, that's also assuming that Draymond does indeed come back to Golden State. I know he
sure
has
looks
some
like
different meetings. It does. I'm curious to see the market. Like Dallas apparently really wants him. The Blazers are talking to him. Apparently Draymond's meeting with Damian Lillard, who seems like he's committed to the Blazers. They're committed to him. We all know that whole saga. But I think even if Draymond comes back, I think it would be an interesting relationship here. But Steve Kerr has been able to deal with this. Like that, he's like a master at it. And it's not, I mean, it may be interesting and a little icy between Chris Paul and Draymond, but Clay and Steph are like the easiest guys to get along with, man. Like they're just two chill, laid back guys. And it's hilarious that they're like, Chris Paul was the sworn enemy once, and Klay Thompson, he's all goofy. He's like, yeah, this is our sworn enemy, but I'm excited for it. I'm like, dude, this guy's so California. It's hilarious. But I don't know, man. Like, I think when you look at it from a basketball sense too, that's what I was thinking. Like the speed and the pace that they've played with in the past, and you have Chris Paul who wants to slow it down. There could be a different juxtaposition between those two styles there. But at the end of the day, it's still Chris Paul, running the floor, running the show. And I think in a way, I don't necessarily know if you're actually going to be taking the ball out of Stephen Curry's hands. Like, I hear that, but there's been times, and Draymond handles the ball a lot when Steph was at his peak. Like, Draymond was the one running trigger on a lot of things too. And if they don't bring back Draymond Green, I think Chris Paul in some fashion of, hey, we're going to run an offense through somebody else, could fill into that in some way.
Well, how long until the patented Chris Paul 18 seconds off the clock in the fourth quarter, I get to my spot at the elbow, I'm taking this jumper I don't share in these moments, until that doesn't fly? Because it's hardwired into him. That's how he plays basketball. And it's going to have to be different, I think, in order to get this thing rolling in a way that it should. Because let's not, forget that every single stop Chris Paul has been at, they've set a franchise record in wins. So they might fuck around and win 74 games.
So I think the other thing too is getting Jordan Poole out of there. That's addition by subtraction to me. And he had that run when they won the championship when he was really good for the Warriors, and then it fell off a cliff last year. He's a minus defender. Like, he's one of the worst in the league. And I think you saw at points when he's not hitting shots last year like he was in the playoffs. He's just a flat out liability. And there's some things that came out after they traded him and said, people in the front office said he's inefficient and ineffective. I'm like, yes, we all watch the games. No shit. So I think in a way it is an upgrade in the sense that you're losing Jordan Poole and bringing in a player like Chris Paul. Now, I think, is Jordan Poole right now better than Chris Paul? Some people would say yes. I would tend to still say no. That's just me. I'm also one of the biggest Chris Paul fans out there. But I just think what he adds for what the Warriors' IQ, the Warriors' identity of being a smart basketball player, doing winning plays, being unselfish to a sense, that's going to go a long way for how the Warriors want to rebrand themselves to try to get one more championship run in.
And also shout out Washington. I don't think we're going to get too deep into a lot of the moves that they made over the last couple of weeks, but this is like, they have a plan, they have a vision. They were able to extract a younger player and picks for a guy that they were probably just going to end up waiving if they couldn't get anything done anyway. So very well done there. I think if you're in the market for most improved players, some of the point guards over in Washington might not be a bad look, because those dudes are going to get 40 shots a game.
And let's talk about it, because Kristaps Porzingis was traded away from Washington to the Boston Celtics in a big splash move. The Celtics, I think, need this kind of rounding out the whole deal here. The point guard you mentioned, Tyus Jones, leaving Memphis in a 3-way deal, heading to Washington. Marcus Smart leaving Boston, going to Memphis. So there's a bunch of different angles we'll attack, but I think obviously the headliner here is Kristaps Porzingis. What it does to me, and I hear people are like, oh, I don't know, like, he's overrated. He actually had a really good season last year. What this does on the basketball floor for Boston, when you just talk schematically, this actually gives them an ability to pick and roll and pick and pop with a big man that spaces the floor for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Like, Robert Williams can't do that because he can't shoot. Like, he can do the rim runs, but you can take that away in a sense. Al Horford, at his point in his career, we saw how cold he went in the playoffs shooting. Kristaps Porzingis can knock down shots, and he can attack and be a third kind of creator from this position that really they haven't had. I mean, by the time it came back around for Horford's second run there, Kristaps Porzingis is a better player than what Al Horford is. I really, really like this for the Celtics. To me, this makes them the best team in the East.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you, which is funny because I was probably going to be there anyways at the end of the offseason, but this certainly solidifies that for me for right now. And you said it, he's like almost a mix of Al Horford and Robert Williams, because for as much shit as Kristaps Porzingis gets from people, if you come into the lane against Kristaps Porzingis, that is at least getting contested. And a lot of times that thing's getting sent back. He's a better playmaker than either one of those bigs at this point. And what was Boston able to do with 65-70% of prime Al Horford 2 years ago was make the finals and go up 2-0 and really have a shot to win a ring. And now I think if Kristaps Porzingis stays healthy, you have to imagine that they're the favorites in the East and one of the favorites in the league. He's not overrated at all. Like at a certain point in his career, he absolutely was. Maybe whenever, like right before shit hit the fan with the Knicks, was like what peak Kristaps love for everybody. And then we just kind of forgot about it. Like he goes to Dallas and everyone just decides like he's the reason they can't win. He leaves, they don't make the playoffs, but it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
And then he goes to Washington and nobody watches Washington play basketball. So it's really hard now to say, oh, this guy is the same dude that was on the Knicks or he was on the Mavericks. I think he's better than that. And I think he suffers because he is injury prone. But if you extrapolate out his numbers, as far as like if you can get 70 games from this guy and he's playing 36 minutes a night, you have an NBA All-Star that you just added, because that's what he is. He might not make it on the actual teams as far as fan voting and stuff like that goes. Numbers for numbers and impact for impact, I think he's better than some of the other fours that get a lot of love around the league. And I think this might be like the perfect time for people to start remembering who he is, because he's going to be the most important player on that team.
Yeah, and he's 27 years old now.
He's the first, remember? He's the unicorn.
He's the unicorn, right? So, I mean, he's 27 now. That's primarily when the peak of an athlete is professionally, is around 25, 26, 27. He's entering that now, or he's been there now. He played 65 games last year. I know he's missed a ton of time, definitely in the last two. He played 65 last year. He was actually really, really efficient. Shot 50% from the field, averaged 23 points a game, about 8 rebounds, about 2 on offense, which I think will go a long way for the Celtics if you can add that in as well. I'm there with you, man. Like, this makes them so much better, makes them much more complete, I think is probably the better term, because it felt like last year they had a plethora of guards, right? You have Marcus Smart, you have Derek White,
and none of them could handle.
And none of them could really handle. So then it was in the hands of Jaylen Brown, who can't handle, and Jason Tatum, who, if that's really your attacker, we see you can bottom up a bit. He's still one of the great scorers in the league. And then they had nothing at center. Like, Robert Williams can't create his own shot. We know what Al Horford is now. In that bench unit, you're pretty spotty. So then you add finally a player who can play and get their own at this big man role in this league. They're a complete team to me.
And this is the first time now in a couple of years where, because there have been games where both Brown and Tatum have it going, and Boston loses, because you're almost looking around waiting. Like, Marcus Smart has to hit a big shot here, or Al Horford has to go off and have 12 points, things like that. Kristaps Porzingis, you can look at that guy and be like, hey, we need 22. And he can go out and get you 22 in a way that Brogdon was never going to be able to do, even though we loved that signing at the time. In a way that Marcus Smart, like, unless he is sitting in the corner all game, probably isn't going to be able to do for you. So I love it. I also think, like, good for Kristaps Porzingis for almost backing Washington into a corner. I know I just gave Washington a bunch of props, but we're team player empowerment. This is where he wanted to end up, and he was able to make it happen.
And so I know some people are mad about bringing in Kristaps Porzingis and having to deal Marcus Smart. Now, I think there's two different angles we can look at it here with the impact of what Marcus Smart's going to do for his departure of the Celtics and then going to the Grizzlies. Let's start here with the Celtics just because we were on them. I think at this point in time, this was the right move for the Celtics to make. And I think organizations sometimes fall into, he's a fan favorite and he's our leader in our locker room. But I think when you really look at what Marcus Smart became, he should never have won Defensive Player of the Year. He wasn't even the best defensive player on his own team. I mean, the fact that he won it over Bam Adebayo is just ridiculous that year. And it elevated him to a point where he's like, well, he's Defensive Player of the Year. He's not that great of a defender. And if you just really watch the games, he's not a lockdown guy on somebody. He can steal the ball, but so did Monte Ellis. You know what I mean? Like, steals aren't everything. So I think what you're doing now is, without Marcus Smart there to run trigger a lot, it does put the ball in Jason Tatum, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and now Kristaps Porzingis' hands more often, who are better players. I think Derek White can do everything on offense that Marcus Smart can do in his career right now. And so I think eliminating a light kind, you actually have improved yourself by getting more minutes out of Derek White. And then even anybody off that bench unit who actually wants to run that bench, I think that's a better impact for the Celtics as well. What do you think about that? Is that a little crazy to say?
I mean, I think you're going to catch a lot of flack for some of the defensive comments, because he still gets into people. Like, and that's one thing too.
So
about
Pat
Marcus
Bev, but we shit on Pat Bev on this pod.
But there are some Boston Celtics that don't want to take the matchup. And so that was easy way out, because Marcus Smart, I'll take the matchup. And I think that's something that might be a little tougher to figure out for them going forward. But almost like everywhere throughout time in any sport, you get these guys that just embody the team and the city and the attitude that you're looking for from this guy. And he comes out of pretty much nowhere, and then all of a sudden he plays his way into a Defensive Player of the Year award, and everybody loves him. the other side of that story is that it always runs its course. And then at a certain point, you're stagnant because you don't want to get rid of this guy because of what he means to the city, the team, the locker room, all those things. But they play slow when he's out there. He's not hitting the shots that are necessary. The swings are almost like a second late as far as like what you really want from a high level playmaker in some of those moments. And that's the difference, coming back from 3-0 to 3-3 and then getting blown out in game 7. Like it's stuff like that just leaves bad taste in your mouth. And look, from where they were when he got there to where they are now, I think Marcus Smart can be happy and kind of hold his head high for what he was able to do for Boston. But like, that was the ceiling with Marcus Smart on that basketball team and running the second unit, especially because like the bench had good players, but you were never worried about the bench exploding because it was just like watching a lot like how Chris Paul ran the offense in Phoenix, except for one guy is walking into the Hall of Fame and the other one is walking to Memphis. And so I think it's good from Boston's side. Brad, I friggin' love this for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah,
and we are the biggest Grizzly haters, I think, on the internet, probably. And we were doing it way before it was cool.
Yeah.
Our biggest thing with the Memphis Grizzlies is that, like, it's fake tough. Like, however you want to slice it, it's soft because it's not real. Marcus Smart is going to walk in there, and they're going to know real quick, like, oh, that's an actual NBA tough guy. Like, that's the attitude that we have to embody, because it's one thing to keep wanting to start fake fights with everybody. It's another thing to be on the floor trying to get the loose ball. Or it's another thing, spending 40 minutes chirping, trying to get into somebody's head, getting body to body, just so you can have that 30-second period in the fourth quarter where you take the ball from somebody and you win the game, because that's what Marcus Smart does. And Memphis had nobody to do the dirty work. As much as Dillon Brooks wanted to pretend it was him or Jaren Jackson, and I'm not hating on him because I think he's a really good player, but I think we did the same thing with him where it's like, yep, 4 blocks a game is sweet. You got to get those though, because that's
you're in foul trouble every time.
That's just 2 points for the other team because you're over here flexing before the ball hits the ground. So I think as far as it goes for Memphis, I saw somebody say like remember when Tony Allen got flipped? I hope that we're going to get another era of grit and grind. I don't think Memphis has the facilities for that at the moment, but he's going to whip these young dudes into shape. And like, you can't play like a punk and be on the floor with Marcus Smart.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what I was going to say. This is great for the Grizzlies. I'll even go here. I think the only minus is that you did give up Tyus Jones, the best backup point guard in the league. But, there's cost to trades, right? Like Washington that's who they wanted out of this deal. Like they wanted a young guard who's going to come in, and kind of the same thing for Washington. They want somebody who's going to run their offense. We'll see who's actually good on this roster as we rebuild. Tyus Jones doesn't need to go out and get 30. Like he's not wired like that. He's comfortable getting 12 and 8, running the offense, putting other players in positions to succeed. And so you do lose a little bit there with the Grizzlies, especially with John Morant being suspended for the first 25 games. But at the end of the day, you do bring in a high-level guy like Marcus Smart in terms of what he does culture-wise. And I think that is the biggest thing that the Grizzlies needed this offseason. Like, they have the talent. They have pieces because Steven Adams is coming back from injury. Brandon Clark's going to come back from injury. Like, they have a roster. They don't have a culture. And Marcus Smart could be that igniter that actually gets them to that point where, okay, we actually need to start taking these guys seriously in the West, because it ain't just fake tough now. It's like these guys know what it takes to grind in this league. So I'm excited to see how it works out.
You can't measure the impact of like flipping the locker room. And if he's able to do that, like the Memphis Grizzlies could realistically win an NBA championship quickly.
They have a high ceiling. That is for sure. And so, Tyson, as much as we love to talk about trades, those are really the only trades that have happened so far. And so we said NBA trade season just because there's been some big names on the move and things like that. But, the other part of the soap opera, there's rumors, there's gossip, there's things like that. And that's what the NBA is so good at as well. And there's a lot going on right now as we're recording on Thursday. I think the biggest thing going on is James Harden now, who it looked like, okay, he's opting out. He's gone from Philly. Then it looked like, well, he's coming back to Philly. And I was going to fucking lose my mind if that happened, especially because there were rumors they're going to pay him more than his player option. Well, it comes out today that he's going to opt into his player option, and then they're going to work on a trade to get him out of Philadelphia, which thank the Lord that there's actually some people with sense in Philadelphia in that front office, because holy smokes, I would not have watched this. I swear to God, I would not have watched the Sixers if they brought back James Harden. and just ran it back with a new coach. Like that would have driven me up a wall. But there's a lot of interest, I think. I mean, so what's going to happen is they're going to trade him. He's not going to be eligible for an extension, which I think is rare. But under this new CBA, Tyson, he's not eligible. So he's going to be a restricted free agent after this upcoming season, or unrestricted free agent after this upcoming season. So you're basically doing a 1-year rental for him. Clippers have interest apparently. The Heat have interest apparently. Who else did I see? I'm not sure if you saw it either. It just came down the docket. I think the Lakers I saw, which is weird to me.
I saw Houston looks like a no-go.
Houston I did see is a no-go. Yeah, so I see. Yeah, so Heat and Clippers are mainly the big two that I'm seeing. Realistically thinking, because if you have to put together a trade package, those are the guys with pieces. But I mean, finally, the Harden era is over in Philadelphia, as short-lived as it was.
So this is this the 6th or the 7th trade request by that Nets big three within the last 2 or 3 years between those three guys? I know we got KD for 2. We just got Harden 2nd, I think.
Harden's second. Yep.
And then I guess we had Kyrie getting 1 or 2. I mean, Kyrie's had it was a whole bunch of things, but
maybe Harden didn't. Well, maybe he did. I don't know.
Who knows? But at the end of the day, I think the Clippers would be the most fun. But there are a lot of rumors right now as far as nose to the or ear to the wall, listening through closed doors for what we get from these reporters. Who knows what's what? But
right.
Apparently they're not super in on extending super max or max contracts to Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. They don't want to give those guys 4-year max deals, which then opens up a whole nother question because they're not going to move on from Kawhi. Because I think Kawhi costs more to acquire and also is a bigger mystery box as far as what you're getting. I don't think you get Paul George back in a trade for James Harden, especially on a 1-year rental. At this point in their careers, I'd rather have Paul George straight up. So that'll be interesting. The Heat would be fun too. I think that James Harden would get ran out of Miami within 3 weeks of training camp because you actually have to show up to the Miami Heat training camp and get after it a little bit. And I don't know if he wants to do that. I think that we don't know yet where James Harden's going to end up because I think this is going to be something that there's always 1 or 2 NBA trades that drag on for 3 months, 2 months or whatever. And as the season gets closer, we get somebody injured in summer league or training camp or whatever it is, or a team gets together and they're like, hey man, we're only 1 James Harden away. And you can say James Harden is washed and this and that. There are going to be teams that are going to be like, that dude just scored 40 points in the playoffs and put that entire team on his back. We need that guy in our locker room. And they're going to trade for James Harden. And a year from now, he's going to find his way to Atlanta or Houston or somewhere else. It doesn't matter because James Harden has done the best job in the history of the NBA, I think, of never really telling us he doesn't give a shit, but showing us night after night.
Maybe, I'm just throwing this out there. Jimmy Butler's come out on record, remember, after last year saying, do I want to be in Philadelphia? Do I still wish I was there? Yes, yes, yes. After he's freaking in the Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe it's just, hey, Jimmy, come back to Philly. We'll give you James Harden, Pat Riley.
Joel Embiid liked Doc Rivers, right?
I guess, yeah. I don't know.
James Harden gets Doc Rivers fired and then requests a trade.
Doc got himself fired, really. I mean,
yeah, but if Embiid says, I like Doc Rivers, you think that they're going to keep Doc Rivers.
I guess, yeah. I don't know.
Dude, I
don't know what's going. Dude, the Sixers are a mess in that front office. They have no clue what they're doing. Daryl Moore. Here's what I'm expecting fully, and then we'll move on to some other stuff. Because, like you said, we have no clue about James Harden. Because, like you said, this could get dragged out forever, which is why I'm fully prepared for this, Tyson. They shop him around. For our podcast listeners, I'm putting this in quotes. They're shopping around Harden, so they're using this. Oh no, opt on in, James. Come on, opt in. There's no market for you out there. It's your old buddy Daryl. Come on, James, and we'll find a place for you. And then the background, they're working together and actually we couldn't find any suitors. James is back, and I'm going to lose it. I'm fully expecting that to happen.
Dude, he might actually die in a Nick Nurse run game. If Harden has to go 48, I don't know how many of those we're going to see.
Gosh. Well, we'll see. You're right. I'm cautiously optimistic that the Sixers actually do the right thing and get Harden out of town, but we'll see what happens. Kyrie Irving, his name continues to be in the news, new visits, things like that, places he wants to see. I don't know if he's doing a Where is Waldo thing or where is, Carmen Sandiego, just traveling around the country. I'll visit you. But apparently he met with the Mavs. Now he wants to meet with the Suns. Brian Windhorst floated Kyrie Irving, maybe Sixers as a destination. Like, who knows what the hell this guy's thinking? I don't know. I see him back in Dallas. I think it's the only thing that makes sense.
Well, I do want to say that if there's a way that you can sign and trade Kyrie for James Harden, I want to watch James Harden and Luka Doncic play on the same basketball team so bad. It'd be the worst TV you could ever possibly imagine, dude. It would be so bad. I'm gonna get the Sun stuff out of the way real fast because that's kind of the report that came out today. John Gambarato, who is like the top Suns beat writer, says there's no way this is going to happen. An underrated part of this is a guy that was a former VP of the NBA Players Association. So if he were to take a minimum deal, like a vet min, to play on a team with 3 like max contract guys, it would go over like a lead balloon. Like there's no way that he's going to be able to do this, even if he wants to. I don't think that the NBA is going to be like, there will be competitive reasons or whatever David Stern's thing was with Chris Paul. This is just, hey, Dallas, if you guys don't pay me what I want, I'm comfortable taking $1.9 million to go play for your worst enemies. I'll go down the valley. There's really not a lot of suitors, Brad, and I think that's part of it is he has to drive up his value somehow because 4 years ago, people would have been lining up around the block to sign Kyrie Irving. And now I think you can run through, like, even teams like Indiana, like, they don't want to bring the circus to town,
not.
And there would have been a point where he could have had 25 offer sheets. And now he's probably going to get 2. And one of them is going to be from somebody that he doesn't really want to play for. And so it's, hey, Dallas, I need you to give me my 3 for $90 because I'm not going to get it anywhere else.
Yeah, it's the only thing that seems to make sense with him going back to Dallas. I just don't see anything else working out. And so we'll see. It's going to be a name that's floated around a lot, like it's just, you're going to hear a bunch about Kyrie. Tyson and I both think he's back in Dallas and he gets his deal. Now, those are rumors. We got like contract floated out here, according to Mark Stein, that Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks apparently on Friday are going to be signed, or at least going to agree to terms with the Houston Rockets. Now, Fred VanVleet apparently is going to be on a 2-year max deal worth $83.6 million. Dillon Brooks also being brought in for 2 years, roughly anywhere from $28 to $32 million. I think for the Rockets, just looking at it from their perspective, they have a ton of cap space. They obviously have an extremely young team, and they're looking to rebuild and rebuild the right way. To me, you bring in someone like Freddie VanVleet, who is a grinder, a culture setter, and is professional. That is what Houston needs. Like, that locker room right now is a mess. Like, they have no culture. It's just an AAU show out there. There's no professionals. It's just, let's just get as many talented people and let's see if we're good. It's like, no, you need structure. You need to be able to learn how to be a pro. I think bringing in VanVleet, and yes, you're going to overpay him, but they have the money to do it. And I think it's a short-term financial hit for a long-term gain. Dillon Brooks, on the other hand, I don't know. I just don't want him anywhere near my locker room, especially with young, impressionable basketball players. Not saying Dillon's a bad guy or anything. Like, I don't know him. I just think for a basketball culture, I just wouldn't want him around if I'm building the organization and if I'm putting together a roster. Freddie, on the other hand, I'd pay him that contract if I'm the Rockets. I think it makes complete sense.
Yeah, and I think VanVleet was always going to get something crazy this offseason, and he's honestly earned it. Like, this dude is, if you haven't been paying attention, he's been pretty freaking good for the last handful of years. It's going to be interesting because a lot of their young guys are guards who do want the ball in their hands. But if you can have Fred VanVleet start for 2 years while Amen Thompson kind of figures out how to play, Jalen Green matures, KPJ or whoever else, one of those guys is probably getting moved, if I had to guess, at some point within the next 2 seasons. But the only thing with Dillon Brooks that makes sense is that Ime Udoka knows that he can figure this out and fix this, because this would be the one spot in the league outside of having Ime Udoka where I would say if Dillon Brooks goes here, like, they're both cooked. Him and the organization are screwed because Houston is the most dysfunctional team in the league, and it's really not close if you've been paying attention. Like, They're all 17 years old. They all have 45-inch verticals. They all shoot 12% from the field. That's basically, what you have in the Houston Rockets at this point. So you need veteran leadership. I probably wouldn't have looked to Dillon Brooks to hand it out, but we've kind of overcorrected a little bit in the Dillon Brooks hate to the point now where it's like, this dude doesn't even belong in the NBA, where he does. But he's closer to an eighth man than he is to a superstar. And I think when you get posted on social media 3 times a week for 12 weeks, 15 weeks, people start getting this opinion that this guy's going to be a stud or he is a stud, and then you watch the games and you're like, oh, this guy's he's on here because he's yelling Ric Flair quotes and all that shit, dressing like Hulk Hogan and stuff. But like between the lines, he plays hard, and I think that's one thing that Houston is missing.
Yeah, and I think he does deserve to play in the NBA. I think he has a spot. But for me, somebody like the Heat, like somebody like Portland, someone like Dallas, like with established players and established culture and locker room. I think the problem we ran into is the Grizzlies were young, and then he kind of did his own thing because nobody really knew what was going on in that locker room. And I think that you would run into the same problems in Houston. That's just me personally. I don't have any inside info on that. But if I'm going to bring in Dillon Brooks, I wanted to have like a strong culture in place already. Let's get into some other names, Tyson. We can do some quick hitters on, because Kyle Kuzma, not the biggest name, but he's been rumored, a potential landing spot in Houston, according to Chris Haynes. Apparently the Knicks are getting close to a deal with Josh Hart on a 4-year extension.
Oh, that was the other Harden one.
The Knicks. Yeah. The Knicks, which is interesting. I think right now we don't really know too much to talk about the Knicks, which is interesting. Like kind of going back to what we said about Harden, like who really knows at this point? Gabe Vincent potentially could be heading up to the 6 to go to Toronto as a replacement for VanVleet. Max Strus, also from the Heat, apparently he's getting heavily eyed by the Indiana Pacers. And then the saga around Bruce Brown, which all of a sudden is the hottest name right now in free agency, as he's kind of doing his little victory lap here. Does he come back to the Nuggets? The Lakers apparently want him. Are they able to get him? The Mavericks, there's a bunch of things going on. So I don't know if you want to just touch on some of those quick hitters.
Well, I think Bruce Brown would be the most important one there to me, just because this guy kind of showed up and then was everything that the Denver Nuggets needed, helped them win a title. Brad, I don't know if you've seen this, but Christian Brown from the Nuggets is going to play Summer League this year. And apparently the one directive he's getting from upstairs is to look for your own shot, hunt your own shot, and like score the ball as much as you can, because we already know he can do all the little things.
Yep.
And that to me sounds an awful lot like they're trying to prepare for life after Bruce Brown.
Interesting.
Because I think that Michael Malone would rather burn the building down than let this dude walk. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a $5 million difference year over year to stay in Denver or go to LA or wherever else. And it's just really hard to expect somebody that's 26 years old that just won an NBA championship to make the team first move instead of a me first move, especially when like the student didn't come in the league with a massive contract, right? He had to wait his turn for a long time. And then once he got it, he grabbed it by the horns. And at a certain point, you kind of just got to pat those guys on the back and send them out the door. And that kind of feels like maybe what Denver's doing.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would fault Bruce Brown if he did that. Like he grinded his ass off. First of all, with the Nets, I think that was one of the biggest reasons kind of that thing fell apart. You didn't have a guy doing the dirty work, and he goes to the Nuggets, fits right in, was one of the missing pieces that got them their championship. I don't think anybody would fault that. That Christian Brown thing's interesting because he can score. We saw him at Kansas. Can he do it at the next level? That's something to keep an eye on. But I think maybe another thing they're preparing for him to walk out the door, just look at the positions they drafted as well. That's kind of a key something to look at. Other than that, Tyson, is there really anything else hopping around that it's gonna? So we're recording on Thursday. I'm going on family vacation next week during the 4th of July week. So we won't be doing a show then. So of course everybody's going to sign or get traded because that's just what happens. But we'll be back after to kind of recap everything. But I haven't seen anything else as of now that's like something big. Have you?
Just Jackson Hayes not getting his stuff picked up, and that wasn't big for any basketball reason or anything like that. It's just like I think if you designed a basketball player in a lab, like physically, they might come out looking an awful lot like that, and this dude just hasn't been able to put it together.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for this edition here of our probably part 1 of part 17 of NBA offseason trades, rumors. Yeah, absolutely. But, I can't believe it. It's basically baseball right now, Tyson, which it's been a struggle so far. But we got Women's World Cup. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on that. Tell them where they can find all of our stuff in the meantime, though.
Yeah, it is the Chalkboard app. It's on the App Store, Google Play, wherever you download your apps. Group name in there is ISWIS. I said what I said. Presents the Roundtable Bets, right? It's ISWIS : Roundtable Bets.
Something like that, yeah.
I believe. I mean, I should probably get this dialed in at this point, but we're pretty sure that's what it is. And if you just type in ISWIS, will come right up. It's Brad, myself, a handful of other people in there. We're trying to build a little community, and we're just everybody in there is throwing picks out. So it's not just Brad and I. It's if you join the group, you are more than welcome to post pretty much whatever you want. Let's keep it above the belt on most of this stuff, but any sport you can think of, we're playing. And Brad mentioned it is baseball season right now, but it's also preseason markets for a lot of the stuff. And we're going to be recording a kind of a primer for college football, if you want to call it that here, that'll be releasing soon as well. So we're knuckle deep already, and it's only going to get, more as the seasons get closer.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, like, subscribe, and share the show. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. Same with your listening to us on podcast form. Subscribe so it'll show up right in your feed. And if you're listening to us on podcast form, rate, review, ask us a question, anything you want to do in those comments, we'll answer it on the show. And if you want to just stay connected to us in the meantime, follow us on our socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's all the same handle at ISWIS_pod. Like Tyson said, we'll be back. We're going to be talking a little college football, having a little fun with that as we get ready for the season. We will speak to you all then, guys. Peace.